Welcome to the Susan LoPresti Wellness Mind, Body, and Soul podcast, the go-to space for midlife and mature women who are ready to reclaim their health, boost their energy, and live long, vibrant, and purposeful lives. Each week, we dive deep into natural wellness, holistic healing, anti-aging strategies, and healthy lifestyle habits to help you feel your best physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whether you're navigating menopause, working through chronic conditions, or simply want to age gracefully and intentionally, this show is your sanctuary for science-backed insights, powerful stories, and soul-nourishing inspiration. If you're a woman over 40 or 50 or older looking to thrive in the next chapter of your life, you're in the right place. My guest today is Richmond Heath. He is a specialist in body-based healing with over a decade of experience helping busy professionals and athletes release stress and restore balance without relying on talk therapy or traditional cognitive strategies. Drawing from his own experience with high-functioning anxiety, Richmond offers practical body-led approaches that bridge the mind and body, reaching unconscious patterns that conventional tools often miss. Through techniques like TRE, which is tension and trauma release exercises, he empowers individuals to experience emotional regulation, faster recovery, and sustainable stress relief. In this episode, Richmond will share actionable strategies and insights into how listeners can start integrating body-led healing into their daily lives for lasting calm and resilience. So without further ado, Richmond Heath, welcome to my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, and I can't wait to dive into this powerful conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Susan.
You're very welcome. So, I have a ton of questions for you. Can you share a little bit about your journey and how you came to specialize in body-based healing for stress?
Yeah, look, it was very much a personal journey where in my probably early 30s, my whole body had started to break down. I had no idea that it had anything to do with stress or high functioning anxiety and that sort of thing. But physically, I couldn't swim anymore because my shoulders had so much chronic pain. I couldn't run and do triathlons because I had chronic Achilles tendonitis. I'd had a few bouts of major back pain to the point where at one point it was so bad I couldn't go up and down stairs because of the pain and the weakness in my leg. Now, as a physiotherapist, I'd only been told these are all biomechanical sort of, tight muscles and you've got to loosen them and poor mechanics. Whereas in searching for some kind of solution, I just couldn't keep going. And I remember telling one of my brothers, I can't do all the things I used to do to keep myself happy, which basically meant I couldn't do all the exercise and sport that used to give me the endorphins and make me feel okay. So life was kind of catching up with me through my physical body. And then the turning point for me, Susan, was one of my other brothers suggested I go and do a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat. And I did a number of those. And on the third one, when I was there, at one point when I was meditating and my mind had calmed down enough that I was no longer controlling my body by forcing it to sit still, my body started to spontaneously move forwards. And it was one of those aha moments where I thought, I'm not doing that. My body is moving itself. Now, long story short, I snuck back in the hall late at night because you're not meant to move while you're meditating, and I just let my body start to move itself. And I went through this extraordinary sort of awakening where my arms started moving up above my shoulders in ways that I physically couldn't do because of pain previously. My body started twisting around. And at the time, I didn't have any understanding of what's happening. I just knew that my body was moving itself and it felt absolutely blissful. And it was stretching my body and opening my whole system up in ways that I could hardly believe. And then many years later, I got introduced to TRE through the work of Dr. David Berceli, who was deliberately invoking spontaneous shaking and trembling and movements of the body through a trauma lens. So I look back, it was really the moment when the lid came off the pressure cooker that was my life and the stress and anxiety. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had a positive, healthy way where I could let go of the stress and tension and anxiety and frustration that was inside me.
And that was through meditation.
It was through meditation, but it wasn't the meditation itself that started to release me. It was that when I got to the point where I let go of control,
Yeah.
my body started to move. So it was the movement of the body that was the key thing, because I'd done lots of meditation before, but often we control the body, we don't let it move. And once my body started to move, Susan, I stopped trying to meditate. I stopped trying to control my mind and stop thinking. I just let my body move. And it was the body movement that was the missing link to finding the freedom I'd always been looking for.
Wow. And where was this stress coming from that you had? Was it
Well,
work related, personal relationships, combination of a lot of things?
or all of the above. I would have said at the time, I never realized I was someone who was living with high functioning anxiety for most of my life. And
Uh-huh.
what I've learned since, I could have said, yeah, I had the pressures of a young family. I was struggling to keep up with my work colleagues. So I was just struggling to maintain life. But what I understand now is that that stress wasn't coming from anything so much externally as much as the unresolved stress and trauma in my own system relating to trauma beginning at, in utero, from birth, early childhood, all those sort of things, that the stress was a physiological pattern first and foremost.
Yeah.
We tend to think I'm stressed and my mind is racing, and the problem is my mind is racing. But the racing mind we experience is like the bubbles bubbling up out of a boiling kettle, showing us the underlying state of the physiology deep inside us that we're often not aware of. So, really, knowing what I know now, the stress was actually the internal state of my nervous system, which I had no idea about. I was just someone who was a bit tense and a bit tight. And those patterns, you know, who knows where they originate from, whether you can go back into utero, birth trauma, all sorts of intergenerational trauma. People might talk about past lives. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. What the key thing is it's the internal state of our system which is being expressed and manifest externally, which we then recognize as stress. So this is why finding this way to let the internal pressure inside my system, inside my body, inside my nervous system, that I had no conscious awareness of, finding the pathway for that to release and let go was really the fundamental change in my whole life.
Yeah, because I'm thinking as you're speaking that it could have been generational trauma, right? But how would you get to the point where you know exactly and you could pinpoint what it is and then be able to fix it? But
Yeah,
it's subconscious, I guess. So you really
ex
wouldn't be able to do it on your own.
exactly. And this is the importance of the spontaneous movement, because the body or the subconscious or the nervous system, whatever you want to call it, it knows where it's come from, but more importantly, it knows how to let it go. And this is one of the sort of misdirections we often have in our Western healing models. Our ego wants to know what the cause is. And our
Yes.
ego thinks, if I just know what caused this, I'll be healthy. But what most of us discover is, even when we know what the origins of, it doesn't necessarily means it changes it in the system. And this is where bypassing our conscious mind and our ego or our conscious intellect is so invaluable, and where spontaneous movements that are being generated subconsciously in the same part of the organism which is maintaining these subconscious patterns is so invaluable, because our ego doesn't have to be involved. And generally, our ego gets in the way of being involved. And just like any other homeostatic process in the body, whether it's our heart rate or our breathing or our waking and sleep cycles or our tissue healing, our body and our organism has evolved with this automatic subconscious patterns capacities to let go of these patterns. And most importantly, we don't need to know where they're from, because we're never going to have the stories for the early childhood in utero the past life, the
Right.
intergenerational. We all think if we can just understand it, then we'll be okay. But the reality is we understand it and it's not. And it's not okay until the physiology of the body reorganizes and releases that pattern. And it has the capacity to do that without us having to be consciously involved or over directing it.
Wow. So how does someone come to the realization of this? If someone who's going through a lot of stress or a lot of anxiety out of nowhere.
Mm. Yeah, so the key thing is we could talk about it, we could explain it, I could give you all the neuroscience, I could give you the shamanic perspectives, I could give you energetic perspectives, but at the end of the day, the way people come to know this in their body is that they lie down. They can do TRE or they can do any other sort of spontaneous movement practice. But once you have that experience where your body starts to move itself and your ego is not doing it, it's undeniable. And at the end of that experience, when you notice, wow, I can breathe more freely, my face is a bit more relaxed, I feel a bit more connected to myself, my senses are a little bit more aware. Once we have that undeniable experience, we recognize that my organism or my body or these neurogenic, we call them, meaning spontaneous movements generated by the nervous system, are moving me in a certain direction. And that direction is towards more freedom and flexibility and openness and connection and groundedness and healing and maturity. So I encourage all the listeners, if you want to understand what we're talking about, it's an embodied experience that will make it undeniable in your organism. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, Susan, is after I was introduced to TRE, is that once we learn how to access or surrender and allow our body to move us back towards this more free state, it doesn't cost anything. We can just lie down the floor and surrender to it at any time, anywhere, whenever we need it. So, my greatest encouragement would be for the listeners to learn TRE, whether that's through my online course that I created during COVID, which is at trecourse.com, or to find a TRE provider. They're in about 85, 90 countries around the world, and you can find them through treglobal.com.
Please explain to my audience what is TRE?
Mm. So originally it was named trauma release exercises because the founder David Berceli was working in war zones and third world countries with mass scale disasters. And he was seeing the human body shaking and trembling in the context of trauma. So, your listeners will relate. If you've ever had a car accident or you've seen someone have a car accident or you've got a shock and your body starts to shake and tremble,
Yeah.
or perhaps you're public speaking and your hands start to shake. So David was seeing this shaking movement in the context of this traumatic experience. And really, the key discovery he sort of made, and he wasn't the first person in the world to do this, but for him was this moment of recognizing that the shaking and trembling was not part of being traumatized. It's not helping the body to fight or to flee, but in fact, that the shaking is trying to help the body recover.
Oh,
Literally, adrenaline. We think adrenaline causes shaking. Adrenaline doesn't cause
yeah.
shaking. Adrenaline mobilizes our neuromuscular system with a huge amount of energy for movement, ideally to fight or flee. And so when the danger is over, the shaking isn't helping the body to fight or flee. It's using up that adrenaline and helping the body come back to a calm, relaxed
Wow.
state. So the shaking is a recovery response. Yes, I've had a car accident, I've had a shock, but the shaking is not part of shock. We don't want to calm that down with a blanket. We don't want to stop that. I've just given birth to a baby. We don't want to stop that shaking. The shaking is how your body brings itself back to homeostasis. And as our physiology does that, then we let go of the somatic or body based reactions to the event that we carry on into the future. We all know that the car accident finished or the abuse that happened when I was a child is no longer happening, but our body is still acting as if it is. And
Yes.
this is why it's so invaluable is when we get out of the way and we let the human body naturally resolve and release that experience, it organically wants to shake and tremble and vibrate and move us back to life just like any sort of mammal that's coming out of hibernation, it goes through a period of shaking and trembling, which is not just about releasing the tension and letting go of the trauma, but more importantly, bringing back the blood flow and the energy and vitality in our system and all the tissues of the body. So we're actually more awake and more alive and engaged in life as well.
How do you incorporate this into your daily life? So I live in New York. You're stuck in traffic. You're late for an appointment and you're sitting there. And that in itself will create anxiety. So here you are in your car. What can you do to help relieve that?
So this is one of the great beauties of this process is it doesn't need you to focus your mind or use a lot of physical effort. Once you have reconnected with your body's natural shaking response, you could be sitting at the traffic lights, you just take a breath and relax and your body will start to tremble and vibrate. So it
Oh,
can be that simple. And one thing to think about is if you've got a dog or you've got animals, think about how often dogs do a little shake. This is something that we as mammals are meant to do on a regular basis throughout the day. It resets the system. It changes the direction that the heart rate is building up, the stress is going up. A simple little shake will change the direction that the heart rate is moving and start to send us into a recovery mode. Now, as a practice, again, the beauty is, Susan, you can do this lying in bed. If you don't fall instantly to sleep, you can bring your knees up. We just use a tiny little bit of muscle effort or load, just holding your knees up against gravity. And very quickly, with a bit of practice, you won't even need to do that. You will just be able to relax and surrender and let your body start to move itself. So, what makes it significantly different from most of our other self care techniques like mindfulness and meditation and yoga and Pilates and exercise and breath work, all those things are 100% valuable. I'm not saying this replaces it at all.
right.
But the point of difference is it doesn't take mental focus or physical effort. So when we're most fatigued, when we're most stressed, when we're most exhausted, and least likely to do those other sort of more effort driven self care practices, this is as simple as lying on the floor or lying on the bed and letting go, and we simply allow the body to release itself and to literally shake us back to peace and freedom.
So just lay down and totally relax your body from head to toe. Just relax your muscles.
Yes, if you have reawakened this shaking response. So, for most of us, we have learnt to control shaking and trembling. We've
Oh,
pathologized it. We think this is a sign of anxiety. It's a
oh,
panic attack. As a young child, if my hands are shaking when I'm presenting at school, I think I look vulnerable and weak. So, we've trained this in the human body to suppress it.
right.
So, what I'm saying is with TRE, we use a little bit of muscle fatigue, like anyone who's ever held a yoga position or you've held a Pilates
Yes.
exercise or you've been to the gym, you feel that little shaking and vibrating. And we all think, oh, that's weakness. Whereas what we do is we just sit there and allow that shaking to build up and spread throughout the body. So, a lot of people need a little bit of practice in order to get to the point where you can just relax, take a breath, and let your body tremble. But just about every single person on the planet, within about 1 or 2 minutes, will be starting to experience this shaking and trembling once they understand why we want to activate it. And we're using this little bit of muscle load and we just surrender into it. And the other invaluable part of TRE, Susan, is because many people experience shaking and trembling with a sense of trauma or being out of control,
Yes.
that what we learn is we let the body shake and tremble, but as soon as it does, then with TRE, we stop and take a break. So you're like, wow, I can let this happen, but I can also control it. I'm not out of control. And so then when you start again, you can let go a bit more and more of your body starts to move. And when more of your body moves, you stop and you're like, wow, I can control that as well. So we learn how to let go and surrender from a place of deep safety where we don't even need to trust the body. We literally just feel 100% safe in control. So, what I'm saying is, for many people, just lying down and letting go may not actually invoke the tremors because we might have a lifetime of suppressing them and containing them, which is deeply
Yeah.
buried in our system. But following the simple process of TRE, 99.9% of people will be experiencing this shake and tremble in a safe and controlled way within a minute or two. And then as you practice, that pathway reawakens, and then it can be as simple as sitting in your car, you just take a breath and let go, or lying on the floor and just letting go, or being in bed and just letting go, and your body will naturally start to shake and tremble itself back to a more relaxed state.
So, to get started on this, do you need to see a practitioner who guides you through this process?
So, some people, if you've got a history of extreme trauma or major mental health conditions, will generally benefit from learning with a practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
just to guide them, to help them keep safe, to learn how to self regulate the process. And you can find providers all around the world at treglobal.com. But during COVID, Susan, where, lots of us, we couldn't work,
Yes.
people started to teach this process online. And at the time, this is only 4 or 5 years ago, the common belief was you have to have a person there to keep you safe. Now, I knew this wasn't true, and so I created a online course where people could learn the process through, recorded videos. So they had guidance, but I wasn't there. Now, over the last 3.5 years, there's been 14,000 people from all around the world who've learnt TRE through this online course, and not a single person has contacted me with any concerns about feeling overwhelmed or being frightened or out of control. So there's a screening tool in there so you can self-identify.
Yes.
But this was the original vision of David Berceli, was that in our Western medical model, we think you have to have a therapist to heal. You have to have someone to guide you. And that's not to discount the value of therapists and therapy in order to support us. But our human organism has evolved, like all animals, with the capacity to resolve stress and trauma without necessarily always needing to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it can be helpful and can give us insights and we can learn more, but it's not necessarily the doorway or the pathway to the healing. If it was, then no one would be stressed or traumatized in our world because counseling and talk therapy would do the job, but it doesn't. And so this is where this is such an empowering process. People can go to the online course at trecourse.com. In a couple of sessions, you will know all you need to know to begin using this technique on your own for the rest of your life. And it's, cheaper than the cost of a single therapy session, and then you've got it forever. And this is what I'm most passionate about. I don't want people to be coming to see me all the time. I want people to be connected with their body, their own body's innate wisdom. And
Yeah.
that then is what takes them on that journey of healing growth, so that everything else we do, counseling, talk therapy, psychotherapy, Pilates, yoga, breathwork, all of those things are able to build upon this central innate essence that our human organism has the capacity to heal and grow and evolve us.
Right. It's not similar, but there's a comparison between this and I'm thinking about somatic healing. Is
Mm.
there like a relationship between the two in some way?
Absolutely. And there's lots of different forms of somatic healing, from somatic experiencing, which tends to be much more a therapeutic process, which is a wonderful process when people are needing that. Other things like Hannah somatics, it's similar, but the key point of difference again here is it's the somatic system itself which is doing its own healing, and we are just learning how to get out of the way. And it's not just about healing and letting go of stress and trauma, Susan, because what most people don't realize is that our bodies shake and tremble and twitch and move in utero. When
Mm-hmm.
we are forming the body, the way the nervous system connects with the body and the way the body develops a sense of body schema, or our sense of our physical structure and who and where we are, that whole foundational process comes from spontaneous involuntary movement in utero.
Oh,
So those of us who are stressed and traumatized, we tend to come to tremoring and TRE like, I'm trying to let go of the past, and that's wonderful. But very quickly, we start to recognize that this process is also reorganizing our structure in the future, becoming more efficient. Our movement patterns become more refined. Our embodiment deepens. And so we start to recognize it's also a process which is reawakening us and growing us into the future so that as our physical structure, as our nervous system matures physiologically, we naturally begin to mature as human beings in our psycho-emotional world as well. And this is again what gets me so excited is this is not just a process about healing your stress and trauma. You know, when we're stressed and traumatized, we're designed to focus on stress and trauma, but we're not put on the planet to focus on healing our stress and trauma. We're put on the planet to live and
Right.
experience life and be creative and curious and engaged and relating to people and the world around us. And once the tremor mechanism starts to free us up into our organisms, then the ongoing practice helps us become more alive and become more of our authentic selves so we can live more fully in the world.
As you're speaking about this, I'm thinking because we talked about generational trauma in the
Mm.
beginning. So if young people begin this process, and as evolution goes on and they have children and then their children have children, maybe a lot of that generational trauma will be released and they'll experience a whole different way of living than we do now.
Absolutely. You've absolutely got it. This is the magic of this process. It's not just about what's happening in releasing the past. But
Right.
if I can become more grounded, more centered, more
Yeah.
authentic, more relational, more alive, that has a flow on impact to my children, to my friends, to my family, even to the way I interact with my dogs.
Right.
And so, one of my favorite sort of taglines or catchphrases for this process, Susan, is world peace, one body at a time, mine. And David Berceli has this wonderful quote which is external conflict ends with the dawn of internal peace. This is
Wow.
exactly what you are pointing to. When we reopen this pathway back to the peace which is innate at the very depths of our being and our soul, that has a flow and effect through the rest of our life. And exactly what you're saying there, I look back and think if I had have had this process when I was 14 and I went through
Yeah.
my most significant psycho-emotional trauma period, who might have I been if I hadn't to go through all that journey of breaking down? And I mean, I'm thankful for it because I've learnt what I've learnt and I've got to what this point is. But young people don't necessarily have to go through all of that trauma and overwhelm if they're able to learn how to release it and to move forward so they can be guided much more by pleasure in life and joy and positive experiences rather than having to act out and go through the journeys that a lot of us have had to because we didn't have these technologies or processes available to us. And I do want to just flag here, Susan, is this is very much a perspective in the Western world
Hmm.
because traditional cultures around the world have been using this spontaneous movement process for generations.
Oh,
The Kalahari Bushmen, if you've seen the film The Gods Must Be Crazy, they call themselves as part of their cultural identity the keepers of the shake. So it's just completely ingrained in their culture. The ancient samurai used to meditate using a process called seikijutsu, where their bodies would start to spontaneously shake and tremble and move. And it was the secret martial art they practiced that let them be Zen warriors, like lethal warriors one moment and then Zen masters the next. Women in traditional Swahili midwives keep women standing up deliberately after birth to invoke and support the body to go through its shaking and trembling discharge, sometimes for up to half an hour before they will let the woman lie down, because they know if they don't let the body go through that discharge, that woman will have problems after birth. So, why I'm saying this is in our Western culture where we pathologize this and we say this is a symptom of panic attacks, anxiety, post traumatic stress, and we suppress it and even medicate it. This is a huge paradigm shift with immense potential to empower people in their health and well-being and the future for the future of the well-being of the world. But I do need to ground it that traditional cultures have been using this for years because they know the value of it in maintaining a healthy mind, body, soul, and spirit in the individual, and then also when used collectively in a community and culture as well.
When a person is experiencing the shaking part of it, does it feel like anxiety that you're having an anxiety attack?
No, it actually feels the opposite. The
Oh,
term, the sort of medical term for it is autotelic, which means that it feels innately pleasurable.
okay.
Now, think about this. Anyone who's ever had experienced the spontaneous involuntary movements of an orgasm, how does that feel? It feels ecstatic.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that every time you shake and tremble, it feels ecstatic like an orgasm, but the only time when people feel the shaking is, oh, this is like anxiety, is if they have only ever experienced that shaking associated with a panic attack or an extreme trauma. But when people learn to let the shaking come on and then they can stop it and control it, almost instantly that fear is uncoupled and broken. And they go, wow, this is not like when I felt out of control when that traumatic experience happened and I was shaking then. So it's like they're associating the shaking with danger and trauma. A bit
Yeah.
like anyone who's got a phobia. If you've been bitten by a dog, you smell a friendly, white, safe puppy and your body's all scared. So people who fear the shaking, it's a phobia. It's
Yeah.
not wrong or bad. It's just saying they've had an experience where the shaking and trembling, which is a recovery response, but they didn't understand it at the time, was associated with something overwhelming and traumatic. So by learning how to self-regulate the tremor and say, hey, I can let it happen, I can stop it, we instantly fracture that sense that this is being out of control. The fear drops away, and people very soon start to say, wow, this feels such a relief. It feels positive, it feels good, and it can even feel incredibly pleasurable and ecstatic as well.
The reason why I ask you is that I would say about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I never had panic attacks. I never had anxiety. And I started to get these feel like my body would be trembling on the
Mhm.
inside. And I
Mm.
couldn't pinpoint because nothing unusual was going on in my life. It was the same old, same old. And I couldn't understand it. And it lasted about 2 to 3 months. And as quickly as it came on, it was gone, and I don't know. I'm thinking maybe I
Mhm.
was going through something like that, but it wasn't pleasurable. It felt like anxiety.
Mhm. And it will feel like anxiety because you didn't have any framing or context for it, and you
Right.
hadn't had any experience of the positive, pleasurable experience of the shaking and trembling like that. So here's the key thing that I want you and all your listeners to understand. That was not a panic attack. It was the beginning of your panic discharge.
Oh,
The shaking is not about the body being under attack. And when we think of it like it being under attack, of course it's not going to be pleasurable.
right.
But once you have not just understood this intellectually, but once you've experienced this shaking and trembling and the relief and the freedom that it brings you, the next time you start to experience that, Susan, you won't be going, "Oh wow, God, what's going on? I've got to work out what's caused this. What's the problem? What's the stressor? What's the trigger? What's going on?" You'll be like, "Oh, thank you. My body is letting me know that there is some stress that it is wanting to release and let go of, and literally shake myself back to a more calm, relaxed place." You will begin to welcome that shaking. So, on some level, in the same way that I had it with the meditation experience, your organism has started to reawaken that natural recovery pathway inside you, which, like for all of us in the Western world, we've been suppressing for our entire life.
Mhm.
So, it's luckily for you, it's got to the point where your organism is saying, this, we need to let this tension go. We need to let the nervous system reset. And it's got to that point where it was even stronger than our habit of suppressing it.
Yes.
And that's why it starts to feel we're out of control. It's like this is happening and I'm not choosing it and I'm not wanting it to. But once you've experienced the tremoring through TRE, or as I say, there are many other spontaneous sort of movement practices, such as Katsujun Undo is a Japanese term. It's called regenerative movement. But once you've experienced it and you've reframed it, you will welcome that shaking response because you'll be like, wow, my body is starting to move me back to peace and freedom that I'm looking for in a way that I can never do. And this is critical at a level that I can never do consciously.
Hmm.
This again is a missing link because if peace, freedom, healing, serenity, enlightenment was a conscious choice, we would all just choose it.
Yeah.
But we can't. And this is where letting the subconscious or the body start to move us in that direction is so invaluable because it offers us something that no other consciously directed volitional self care practice or technique can ever offer us. So it's working at a profoundly deep level where we don't need to know what the intergenerational trauma was. We don't need to know what the early childhood trauma was because the body doesn't need to know that. It just needs an opportunity to move itself and us along with it back to freedom.
Wow. I'm thinking about this experience of mine, and the first time that it happened, I was interviewing on my podcast a doctor, and the episode went great. And as soon as I signed off, I started to get this overwhelming shaking. Like I thought I was having a stroke maybe, and I
Mhm.
was home alone. And I said, I'm going to take a walk outside because if I'm going to have a stroke, at least someone will see me on the street somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
If I'm in my
yeah,
house, no one will know. And I
yeah.
started walking and walking, and little by little, it went away.
Mm,
But it came back several times after that. And then
mm,
for some reason, it just ended after about 3 months, and I
mm.
didn't have it again. But that was an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, and look, you raise a really good point here, which we haven't covered yet, is that the body also shakes and trembles when it is overexcited. So in that story there, what I would suppose is it wasn't that the interview with the doctor brought up something traumatic. It was more likely that it went so well and you started to feel wonderful. Now, the nervous system, if there's more charge running through it than it can integrate, and the system and the body can integrate, then it's going to shake and tremble as well. And we all know this. If you cast your mind back to being a little child at Christmas and you can't sit still with the excitement. So it's not just stress and trauma where the body does it, but any time where there's more energy flowing through the system than the system can currently cope with.
Uh-huh.
And the issue there is not that there's too much energy, it's that the body is not able to soften and vibrate and let that energy flow freely because of the rigidity and the tension in our system. Again, this is where this process is then about awakening us so that as the shaking happens, rather than trying to get rid of the energy and
Yeah.
calm it down, it releases the tension that lets our energy flow more fully and our system becomes more supple. So the next time we've got more capacity to let more energy flow through our system without the body needing to shake. And so this process of reawakening our energy flow is also something that happens when we let the shaking and the spontaneous movements free our structure up so that the energy can express and so we start to experience ourselves as being more alive, having more vitality, being more curious, engaged, creative and excited, but in a much more grounded and relaxed state.
Wow.
So it works on both directions. So yeah, that would make sense to me that the in your experience it was probably just the excitement and the positivity flowing through which was more than your structure could cope with
I
at
think
the time.
so. I think I was also overwhelmed because it was the first time I was speaking to a doctor. And, in my thought process was like, am I good enough to be interviewing a
Bit
doctor?
nervous. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes
But it
sense. So it sounds
continued
like
for a while.
yeah, and it sounds like a it could have been a combination of the stress and the excitement and all those sort of things. The key point though is that to your body, it doesn't really matter what that trigger was. it was the opening and the reawakening of this process, which has been wanting to happen in your organism, in all our organisms, since we were born, before we were born.
Yes.
But we've suppressed it. And the idea that it went for 3 months was probably that sense of it was spontaneous and the body was still wanting to shake and tremble because it's like there's a little crack in the armor. There's a
Hmm.
little opening of the door. And so the body's like, come on, we need to do this. We need to do this more. And once you experience deliberately surrendering or invoking that response, you will find that your body starts to naturally bring that forwards whenever your system needs to create more spaciousness, more flow, more vitality, and more freedom so you can be more alive in your life.
Wow. So, what can you leave my audience with today? What thoughts would you like to leave them with? Or anything else that you want to share?
Well, look, the thought I think we've covered most things, but here's a question for you would be, how would your relationships be if you were able to come to those relationships in an entirely calm, relaxed, balanced state, free from stress or anxiety, free from frustration or anger or fear? What difference would that make to how you relate to your partners, your children, your family, your work colleagues, your animals, the environment, trees, nature, the earth? If we could come to those relationships from a truly calm, grounded, open hearted place where we can meet authentically with one another,
Well, it sounds like the world would be a better place.
the world would be a better place. And the world, in amongst all the chaos,
Yes.
there is a grassroots movement. Again, this is very much a Western thing. In traditional cultures, people have been using this spontaneous shaking reflex to maintain and increase their vitality and health and well-being individually and collectively as a community and culture for decades. But through TRE and other spontaneous movement practices that are now being sort of integrated into the Western scientific worldview, because we can talk about the nervous system and polyvagal theory,
Yeah.
but in the Western culture, there is a grassroots movement which is spreading through the culture in the exact same way, Susan, that the spontaneous movements, when we give them the opportunity to, gradually spread themselves through our individual bodies and structure to completely and continually open us up over time. So, on one level, it's not even a question of imagine what it would be like. This could lead the world to a more peaceful place. It is already moving people, families, communities, cultures, and the world to a more calm, relaxed, and integrated place in the future.
I would love that. I'd love to see that. We really need that worldwide.
Worldwide, and this is why I love the tagline: "World peace, one body at a time, mine." We need to start with ourselves. We
Yes.
spend so much time trying to fix others and heal others, and but if we are not peaceful inside ourselves, how can we expect other people to? If we can't integrate and ground and learn through our own triggers and our own unresolved traumas, how can we expect our children to? Mahatma Gandhi says, be what you want to see in the world. If we want to see
Yeah.
world peace, we need to find this within ourselves. And this process, in my experience, is the most simple yet profound process I have ever seen to help me on that journey and to help all of us on that journey towards a world full of not just peace, but harmony and the joy of this experience and the opportunity that we have to be alive.
Richmond, I would love for you to give me links and things I could put in the show notes so that my listeners could learn more, where to go, and
Yeah.
also your website and all of that.
Yeah, so the place to go to get started is www.trecourse.com. So that's the online course where you can
Yes.
have the experience. There's lots of information and then there's links from there. And I will be releasing in the next few, probably in the next month or so, is I've created an advanced online course so people can go deeper into the process. The trecourse.com will get you started and all you need to know on your journey.
Okay.
Or if you feel like, this sounds great, but I'm a bit nervous, or I've got some major trauma, or I've got some medical condition or mental health condition, then and you feel a sense of that you would like to learn with someone to guide and support you, then you can find TRE providers all around the world at treglobal.com, or if you're listening to this in Australia, at treaustralia.com. And the most important thing, Susan, is it's not about the theory, and the information is fascinating and enlivening and really interesting, but ultimately all it really comes down to is learning how to lie down and let your body move itself as it needs to. So it's about learning the practical part of that, which you can do through the online course at trecourse.com.
Okay. And are you also on social media?
I am a little bit, but a little bit of Facebook, tiny bit of Instagram, but ideally doing less and less of that all the time. Again, I'd say go and get into your body rather than spending more time on social media. That's the key thing. Social media is a wonderful, what's the saying? It's a wonderful servant and a terrible master.
Yes, that's
So yeah, you
great. I
can find
love
me on
that.
Facebook. But again, there are TRE providers. The listeners will be able. There's heaps of TRE providers in the US. David Berselli has a strong presence on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
If you look up David Berselli as a channel, he's got lots of endless videos,
How do you
lots of
spell his last name?
Bercili,
Okay.
Bercelli. So if you Google him and David TRE, you will find him. And there
Okay.
are lots of practitioners in North America. The other thing I would flag is that while this process is brilliant because you can use it on your own whenever you need to, there's also nothing quite like tremoring and having your organism move and resonate and express in a group. So there are
Oh,
workshops and providers running groups all around the world. And I liken it a little bit to singing, in that I can sing on my own in the shower and it sounds fantastic and I enjoy that. But singing in a group of people creates something entirely different and often far more profound and pleasurable. So I encourage people, get started, use the tremoring on your own. But if you get the opportunity to attend a workshop or a group where you can let your body tremor in a collective space, that's a whole other entire experience that you won't regret. And you'll often find that it will take your movements and your body experience to a whole deeper level that you won't even be able to imagine when you're only tremoring on your own.
wow. Great advice. Thank you. It was such a pleasure to meet you. I learned a ton of new things today that I never knew before. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I'd love to have you come back again.
Oh, very happy to anytime, Susan. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this information. And, I'm so passionate about it because it's free, it's inside ourselves, it's self empowering. And it was really the turning point in my life of sort of changing direction 180 degrees from grinding down towards a pretty stressful, traumatic life that who knows how it might have ended, and then all
Yes.
of a sudden changing direction and now being on this pathway where every day is a new day and I'm just becoming more authentically myself, still going on the journey of healing and growth, but life is looking brighter and brighter every day as I reawaken and come back into the
You're
community and
luckier than
my
a lot of
family.
people who never found something like this, you know.
That's right. I'm incredibly blessed, and this is why I'm
Yeah.
so passionate about letting other people have this reawakening and access to. And this is the thing: it's not some new technique, it's not some new modality, it's not some new treatment. It's just letting people know that it's giving them back their human birthright. That this shaking response is inside them, and we've just got to stop pathologizing it and misunderstanding it, which has been done by the Western medical model. So that's, I'm just passionate about giving people or reconnecting people with this human birthright, that this is already inside them and it's theirs to use for free to empower and enliven their lives.
Yeah, that's great. I'm thinking right now because the majority of my audience is a midlife woman, late 40s, 50s, 60s, and going through perimenopause and
Mm.
menopause. There's a lot of anxiety that they're experiencing, a lot of things going on that you're like, what the heck is going on? And this may be a technique that could help them navigate through that whole process a lot easier
Right.
than
Yeah,
it
look,
is.
absolutely. And it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, or what you are going through. Now is the right time to begin.
Yes. On that note, that's the best way to end this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for this powerful conversation with Richmond Heath. I hope his insights on body-led healing and nervous system regulation opened up new possibilities for your own wellness journey. Remember, true healing doesn't always start in the mind. Sometimes it begins with listening to the wisdom already stored in your body. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to check out the resources Richmond offers and explore TRE or other body-based practices that can support your calm, clarity, and resilience. As always, thank you for being a part of the Susan LoPresti Wellness Mind, Body, and Soul community. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who may benefit. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an opportunity to nourish your mind, body, and soul. Until the next time, take a deep breath, honor your body, and keep showing up for yourself. You deserve it.